Okay, hello. Welcome to the first episode of Lip Sealed Podcast with me, Claire Taylor, and today we have our first guest, Xandra Mahoney.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. Okay, first, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself. What is your name? What is your age? What is your grade? Just give us some background.
Well, my name is Xandra. I'm in 11th grade. I'm 16 years old. I'm from California. I don't, I don't know what
Yes.
information to give. Yeah, kind of just your average girl. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, to start off, I want to know about your families. As you know, this is a podcast about feminism and religion in a Christian nationalist America, and we're just trying to see your perspective on all of those. So, to fully understand, I would like to know what is your family's background with religion? Like, what religion were your parents raised? What are they now? Um, yes.
Okay, so my dad, he's from like the East Coast, like New England area, and I feel like, well, I don't want to generalize, but I feel like there's like a lot of like Irish Italians out
Mm,
there. That's like kind of the demographic of families. So he was Irish Italian and kind of just raised going to church casually, like not an every single week thing, especially because he had like a bigger family. So I think it was harder for them to get to church every week.
mm,
But it was definitely normal in their lives and like, typical American, you go for like holidays like Christmas mass, stuff like that. And then my mom, I think that she did a lot of like dipping, like she tried a lot of different religions. Um but both of my parents did end up deciding on becoming like when me and my brother were being raised, we went to a Catholic church, which was in the neighborhood. My parents like to do stuff that's local, so that has influenced like a lot of our religious practices, just whether or not it's close to where we live or if it's in our
mm,
community, like how it benefits the people around us.
mm.
Um, but we went to a Catholic church for a while and then we stopped going to church for like when my brother started to get older. But I did go to Sunday school. I received communion. I did all the classes and everything. Like I'm certified. I'm certified. Um, but yeah, so around I think 2018, we found a church that was walking distance and like it was a long walk, like, but it was walkable,
Yeah.
but it was like at least 3 miles from our house. And we started to go there. My mom liked it because it was smaller, because like and a lot of Catholic churches are like huge, so you don't really know, like no one really knows each other unless you're like family friends or the priest or the pastor or the presider or whoever. Um, but at this smaller church, our pastor knew us by name and he would like smile at us even if we came in a little late, during the sermon. So I think that they really liked that sense of community. So now
Mm.
we're Presbyterian, but
Okay. So how do you think like change like as your parents like change sort of like throughout raising you and your brother, how do you think that influenced your view on like the permanence of religion and like on how you can like experiment with what you believe in, or have you always kind of just been like what changed with your view as you guys changed from different churches?
Well, obviously there's that thing of like I was just young, so I wasn't like,
Yeah.
taking in everything. Like I knew my church, they had a Sunday school, but it wasn't during, or was it I think it was Saturday school. It wasn't like on the day of the
Mm-mm.
they were classes, they were religious classes. So there was never like a kids corner, so I would have to sit through the entire mass or sermon,
Mm.
like the entire program, which I found to be kind of boring. It's like being 6 years old, you can't really sit still for that long,
Yeah.
and then you have that long line that you have to do, and it's like, oh my gosh. So I think that I didn't fully register like what was going on then, and then taking the classes too, that really like that didn't put it over the top for me. Like I still wasn't aware of what was happening. And then when I did receive communion for the first time and like I had that whole ceremony and like I was getting gifts and stuff and my family was like flying out from different states to come see it, I was like, oh, this seems like it's pretty important. So that kind of solidified, okay, this is the Catholic Church for me, and like, oh, this is what church means. And then changing churches, I kind of didn't pick up until about like 3 years ago, which is might be a red flag because I was like 11. Or wait, 3 years ago I was 12. Like I was 13 3 years ago. Okay. So maybe like 5 years ago. I didn't really pick up that it was a different type of church. Like
Uh-huh.
I just assumed it was a smaller Catholic church, but I
Mm.
didn't realize the difference between like dominations and stuff like or yeah, dominations or denominations.
I think you
I it's one of them.
yeah.
But I didn't pick up the difference between those two. So I didn't really understand that I was switching churches. And by the time I had realized that, it was kind of just normal. So it didn't make me like feel it didn't make me feel isolated, like, oh, it's like again, like too black for the white kids, too white for the black kids. Like it didn't feel like one of those.
Okay.
But it definitely never felt like a solid thing that I wanted to come back to every week. It was kind of just something I did.
What is your religion now? Or whether you are religious or not, or like what do you believe and how does it stray from your parents' beliefs? And then if it is different, then did you feel any pressure or um guilt being like believing something different than how you were raised?
It's on it like my personal religious journey has been like such like long and I don't even know. I want to say nuanced, but like defining
Yes, yeah.
it's like a weird just long journey.
Hmm.
Um there was like a time like when we started like 6th grade and we were taking religion classes. I had never taken a religion class before. Um besides of course the one in my church, but I never
Right.
taken an academic religious class that
Yeah.
wasn't like, this is Genesis and like Jesus
Hmm.
loves you. It was like let's read the Bible from an academic standpoint.
Mm.
And I thought that that was so cool, and I wasn't like fully invested in religion academically at that point, but it kind of opened up the door for it.
Mm.
And then there was like this time in like 7th grade and 8th grade where I was kind of just like, navigating my own morals and like deciding how
Yeah.
I felt about certain things. And I kind of just I got really, really into Catholicism like extensively, more than I ever had before or ever had after that point. I was like doing the rosary every night. I was like reading the Bible. I was just like really, really into it. And I would like encourage the people around me to like pray and read the Bible and like understand it. But I was still reading it academically. And then we got to this point, kind of, it was between 6th grade and 7th grade, where the lesson plan from that week for our religion class would overlap almost perfectly with whatever we were talking about in church that weekend. So then it became this like, okay, here's the academic part of the Bible, and then
Mm.
here's like the religious standpoint, spiritual standpoint of it. So that was also really moving. But then at some point in 8th grade, probably at the beginning of 9th grade too, I was just like, I started reading philosophy. I started reading like Camus and stuff.
Mm.
And for those that don't know, a lot of existentialists don't believe in God at
Mm.
all. They're not necessarily like anti-theists, but they're not agnostic. Like they just don't believe in God.
Mhm.
Um, and so I got into reading a lot of that, and I was just like, you know what, this kind of makes more sense. Like, I don't see why there would be a God. I've like done all this praying, I've done all this reading, and I haven't like come to any conclusion. Um, so, but then again, I got into like a paradox almost of like, okay, just because I can't prove something exists doesn't mean that it doesn't. Like, ignorant, like an ignorance fallacy, appeal to
Yeah.
ignorance. So there was that. And I had this one friend who I met this summer before 8th grade, and she lives in Arkansas, but she would like come out here every summer. Um, and she was very, very religious. But she was like such a nice person, and she just had like such good energy, and she was just really warm to all those around her. So I really trusted her. Like it didn't feel like organized religion, if that makes sense, when I was talking to her, but
Mm.
she was going based off organized teachings and like the Bible and stuff. And I remember one day, I think it was freshman year, I was just really confused about all of it, and I couldn't like put together how I was feeling. So I texted her and we just talked about it, and she was like, this way that you feel about like why you're so torn with religion is because God is like trying to move you towards religion. And ever since then, I've been like always skeptical in the back of my mind is like maybe the reason that I'm so academically interested in religious studies and stuff like that is because there is some sort of like higher power that's like
Mm,
towards it. Um, but I don't know. At this point in my life, I'm definitely agnostic. Like, I'm totally open to learning new stuff and like I'm okay with believing new things. And I want to hear what other people think, but I don't base my life off of God. Like I like to base my life off of how I interact with the people around me. Like I'm more focused on human beings than like the creator of human beings.
mm,
So I will say that just personally, whenever I'm doing something and someone's like, I mean, this is like pretty cliche, but like, oh, God wouldn't like that, Jesus wouldn't like that.
hmm.
Or someone's like, it's okay, Jesus still loves you, or like God still loves you. I cringe a little bit because I'm like, but I am still worried about how I'm treating the people around me and like
Yeah,
the way the world is. But I don't know. I'm still interested in it. I like to hear what other people think, but I wouldn't consider myself like a Presbyterian or a Catholic to say, but I would say I'm definitely a religious person or like I focus more on like the academic part of it. Like I like to like read the
right,
Bible, understand it, analyze it, but I don't like pray, if that makes sense.
right. Okay. I think you touched on this a little bit, but going to going to an all-girls Catholic school, I think that like at least for me, I think it started my interest because before I wasn't raised Catholic. I wasn't raised with any religion, and I wasn't obviously surrounded as many women as I am now. So I think it started my interest, like sparked my interest in religion and in like feminism and like the study of women in general because we're constantly surrounded by women, like 5 days a week, like almost 26 weeks out of a year, like constantly, we constantly surrounded by religion and women at the same time. So, how do you think going to an all-girls Catholic school shaped, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how did it shape your view on being a religious person and also being a woman? Because our
Yeah.
school is very diverse, so religious wise. So how did it alter your thoughts on that part as well?
Well, what I really liked about our school, I'll touch on the religion a little bit more and then we
Yeah.
can talk about feminism. But like I said, it like pushed me into the academics of the Catholic faith.
Mm,
But what I really liked about it and what kind of opened up my mind more to like, oh, I can just read the Bible from like a distant standpoint is the fact that so many of our classmates had different religious beliefs and like practiced
mm,
different things. So like we had like some Jewish girls in our class, we had some Catholic girls in our class, we had some Orthodox people in our class, like
hmm.
stuff like that. And everybody was just reading it kind of objectively. Like everyone was just looking at the Bible and we were just talking about it as if it were like a text and like nothing else.
Mm,
And that kind of made me like, oh, like this is not exclusive to one group. This is literally for everyone and it's like
mm,
to be interpreted in certain ways. Um, and like talking about like the feminism of it all, I always before I came to the school, my dad was convinced that it was going to be like isolating to go to an all-girl
mm,
school because both my parents went to single gender schools. Like my mom went to an all-girl school, my dad went to an all-boys school. And then my brother went to a co-ed school and he's 4 years older than me. So they saw how that was working out for him and they were like, I don't know, like he's more social, he gets to like meet a bunch of different people. It might just be better if she goes to a co-ed school. But I really liked our school and I was like, I need to go. Like this is a good school. And so we talked about that for a while. So I was nervous at like I was pretty like I need to go to this school, but I was still nervous that it would be isolating that I would be like kind of not like deprived of seeing guys, but just like
yeah.
just like weird around them. Just like I would not have the social like maturity to be around
Mm,
guys. Um, but as I like, middle school is middle school. I'm not even gonna count it. Everyone's awkward in middle school, but like high school, I really didn't have a problem with like socializing with anyone. So that problem kind of left. But what I did end up finding out later through like discussions with my dad and stuff is that going to an all boys school is so different from going to an all girls school because like it's not the factor and like the main characteristic of a single gender school is like or like an all girls school specifically is not, there's no boys at this school. It's like you're literally just surrounded by a ton of like strong, really smart women. So I feel like that really influenced me to be like, I like walk into a room and I'm literally just surrounded by like people that are like me who are in really high positions of power and stuff. And it's like that, like you said, 5 days a week. Like that's like
Hmm.
crazy. And not a lot of girls have that. So I mean, like our president's a woman, like our principal's a woman, ever all like
Hmm.
most of our teachers are women.
Yeah.
So that like I really think that that does change us a lot more than we realize in our like in the way that we view the rest of the world, because now I step into these like programs like youth in government and I'm like yeah, I could totally run for president, like I could totally do that position, and I'm not really intimidated by a guy running. Well, like my friends are like, no, we should just like let him run, you know, he really wants it. But I can tell in the back of it's like, why would I not run just because a guy is running, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like it's stuff like that. It's kind of the little things. And then we do have like, I mean, I do a lot of admissions events, you do some too. But something that they always say all the time is like our school like prepares you. It doesn't get you through college, or it doesn't get you to college, it gets you through college. Um, but that's because like these girls from our school, they go to these universities and they don't have a problem raising their hand, and they don't have a problem like speaking up, which is something that statistically, like from co-ed schools, a lot more girls have a hard time with, because
Yeah.
they're so concerned about the way that other people view them, and they don't have like that same welcoming spirit. So I don't think that it's necessarily has anything to do with like not seeing guys. I think that like the feminism, so to speak, or just like the power in being a woman that we get from our school is just, it's such a life skill, honestly. And it just comes from like being around nice people who like want to see you do well. And it really like, it doesn't have a ton to do with how exclusive the program is, but it's more about
Mm.
like how it's inclusive within one group, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like that definitely influenced the way that I think about the world, but and like the people around us. But I don't know. I've always kind of just been like, I mean, feminism, like as it's defined, I've always thought like, yeah, well, I actually have a funny story about it. I've always thought like, yeah, obviously women should have rights. We should have the same rights as men. I feel like even just like growing up as a young girl in California, it's like a liberal state. It's kind of like a given. Like, why wouldn't I have the same rights as a guy?
Mm.
But I do remember one time in elementary school, I went to a women's rights rally or like parade, and I like didn't fully understand what the word feminist meant, but I was like, oh, femme, like woman, like it's like something to do with women, like I so it means you're a woman. And I ran into this kid from my class, and he was wearing a shirt that said feminist on it, and I was like, wait a minute, why would you be a feminist? So I was a little,
You don't look like a feminist.
it's like you're not a girl. So that's what I think I actually learned what feminism was. But yeah,
Mhm. So,
strong
yes.
of it.
So again, being at a all-girls Catholic school, do you think what is how did your view on being a woman and being religious simultaneously like evolve and change? Because I think a lot of people associate being extremely religious with also not being a feminist.
Well, I will say, um, the time that I was in the Catholic Church, like in the Catholic Church, I was
Yeah.
pretty young, so I wasn't
Okay.
like picking up on like the literature of it all and like the way
Right.
that they were reading the Bible. Like I was kind of just zoned out and like trying to get
Yes.
through that 2 hour mass. Like you know what I mean? But when we did get to high school specifically, and in middle school too, but it was more towards like the later years just because of like maturity and stuff. Um, I will say, like, when we talk about the stories of Mary, there was a lot more focus on like the fact that she was like brave and strong and like, you know, just resourceful, and like she had gone through all this stuff, rather than the fact that she was like a virgin. You know what I mean? It was like she was chosen by God because she was worthy, but not because of like this one factor that for so long have people have been using to like define women specifically. But other than that, our curriculum really just has like a focus on like you can be a feminist through religion, and like there are stories in the Bible that are feminist depending on how you read them. Now I'm not fully going to get into the readings of the Bible, but there are a lot of different ways to read it. Um, but my favorite example of this is when we were focusing on the Gospels last year, and we were talking more about the mothers in the gospel rather than, Jesus, who the gospel's about. Um, but it wasn't necessarily like these women are more important than Jesus. It was more like these women are as vital to the story as any of the male characters. Like we're always talking about Abraham and like we're always talking about Adam, but Eve was also 50% of the story. And you know, the creation story, I don't think about it a lot. I don't really think about Genesis, but I will say that there was never like when I was in the Catholic Church, because Genesis is kind of like the basic of the Bible, and that is what they teach a lot of kids. It's like in the beginning there was light and God was like, let there be light. Um but I don't remember there being like a villainous vibe tied to Eve. But as I did get older and I started to like read more literature and like poems and stuff, there'd be a lot of comparisons of like evil women or like feminists to Eve. And I was like, oh, this is weird. And like even in our A Push textbook, just this last like 3 months, like when we've been talking about women in like resistance movements, all of the people that oppose them are like comparing them to like Helen of Troy and Eve. And I feel like our school just never did that, and they did like the opposite of that. It was like, yeah, Eve was here, but she wasn't necessarily villainous. Like the point of this story is not that the woman fell for it, but it was just that someone created by God, it could have been Adam or Eve, fell for like, this test sent, well, it again depends on how you read the Bible, but like this test by or what was he? He was like a lizard before he was a snake. I something something like that. I can't remember the exact title of the course, but it's women in religion and then like how that translates into real life. And like part of the curriculum is you bring in a woman from your life and she talks about religion, and just that class in general kind of proves the point of like, yeah, you can be a feminist and you can also be religious, and like the two, it doesn't mean that they necessarily coexist in every single space, in every single state, in every single region, but they can and they should. And like that's the type of future that we're trying to move towards with, our school specifically, but just our that should be like our general goal in its entirety, if that makes. I'm like zoning out and looking at my fish, so I feel like my words aren't really making sense anymore. But yeah, I feel like I never felt coming into this school, I never felt like there was like a challenge between, thinking, yeah, girls should have rights and like we should be held to the same standard and like have the same rights as men. um I never thought that that was like a weird thing in relation to being Catholic or to like reading the Bible and stuff. But it wasn't until I got to our high school that I was like, oh, not only can the two coexist, but like they should, like they mesh really, really well to like be a feminist and believe in rights. Like we're all created in God's image, so why would we be different from one another? If that makes sense.
Right. And I think you also said this earlier, just being constantly surrounded by young girls exactly like us who like are also surrounded by a bunch of women, and it's some obviously it's not competitive, but you want to impress people, you want to be at the level as other girls in our class, and you want to, because like being surrounded by a bunch of like strong people all the time and very smart people all the time, you don't want to be the weak link, and you want to like excel more, and you want to be at least their level.
Yeah, and like one of our dear friends, she always says at all the admissions events like, yeah, everyone's competing, but everybody wants to see everyone else win. And
Yes.
like that's kind of a spirit I'd never seen before until I got to our school, and not for this to become like an
Yeah.
ad, but like
Yeah.
it's like kind of a crazy feeling to be like competing with other people and like, oh, I'm trying to like get the best score on the test or I'm trying to run the fastest at practice, but like whenever someone else wins, you're like, ah, she deserved it. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any aspects of your spirituality that you feel conflicted about, or if there isn't, um, like growing up, what did you feel conflicted about?
Oh, like when I was like coming to the conclusion that I'm a fan.
Yes.
Um, I was like, I don't know, whenever I would express being iffy, well, there was like this one thing of like, I didn't want to make anybody else feel bad about their religion. Like, I knew a lot of people that I knew that were not religious were like anti-theists and very much like, if you believe in religion, like you're dumb, or like if you're
Mm.
like faithful, like you're an idiot, you're guided by something you don't know. So there is that aspect of like, I didn't want anyone to think that I thought that I was like above them, or that I just didn't think that what they were saying was valuable. But I would have these conversations with my parents. My mom always says they both have like their own little religious sayings.
Hmm.
My mom always says that she wanted me and my brother to like be religious and like go to church and like go to like get communion and stuff so we could understand that we were like a part of something that was bigger than us, so that we didn't become like self-centered people and like, oh, everything's about me. She wanted us to see that there was like other people in our community and like we're all equal, we're all created in God's image, like we need to treat people with kindness. And I think that that's like a really great theme. So I was worried that if I wasn't religious, like I was going to lose, that like
Mm.
kind of humanness, like um but eventually religion started turning from that to like, oh, God is watching you, like God is like, all powerful,
Mm.
God's controlling you. And I was like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like whenever something good happens, I might say thank God, but like I
Yeah.
feel like it happened because of something else, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like I got the A on the test because I studied for the test, not because like I prayed before the test. Like if that makes sense,
Right.
because I can pray before the test, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get an A. So it was kind of like that. Like I don't know. And like you could say like God gives you the motivation to study or like the opportunity to study, but even that I'm like, I'm kind of iffy on. And then my dad would always say, life is too perfect. Like everything just has fallen into place too nicely for there not to be a God. Like evolution, the Big Bang, like we all believe that to have happened. Like we don't think that, or my family specifically doesn't think that Genesis was like the start of time. But it's like it's just like math, stuff like that, science. They just all fall into place too perfectly and make too much sense for there not to be like some higher power that put them in place. And I always thought that that was like a nice sentiment, but I was never like, like I don't know, like I don't know, it just didn't make a ton of sense to me. Like it wasn't really like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I believe it. Like let's go to church. Like I was still very skeptical. Um, and then it wasn't until my friend Jada said like God is my friend that I met at summer camp said, God is like trying to move you towards, yeah, studying academically, like studying the Bible academically, and that's why you're so inclined to think about it and like want to learn more about it. It's because God's like trying to move you towards learning more about it. And I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like I do kind of feel like it's like a subconscious thing because there wasn't any reason that I was like, oh, religion's so interesting. Like it's just another book that I was like picking up, but I just felt so moved towards it and like compelled to read it. I was like, okay, like that might be the clearest sign of God that I've had like this entire time. But then that turned into a lot of other questions like why would God want me to read it? And then something that really started to like stray me away from um from religion, or just like the spiritual side of religion, I guess, is like I don't like number one, hate groups based in religion. Um, that's always been like, I don't understand how, someone can do this and like harm people and then say like, oh, if you look at Mark 12, actually we should be doing it. It's like, oh, whoa, it's words on a paper. Let's not. So, stuff like that. And then also I'm like, I used to be a lot more into politics than I am now and like political structures and stuff. But this like, although there's a separation of church and state, if you look into a lot of like writings and structures and just like systems that we have set up in America specifically, they're really, really tied into religion. And then you see that and you see hate groups and you're like, oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Or like, I would know people at church that would say, like, God is like speaking through me right now, or like, God told me to do this today. And it's like, but I feel like he didn't though. And like not to deny them that or to say that it didn't happen, but to me it just never made sense. Like I need it, me personally, I it has to make sense for me to like be like, yeah, I believe it, or yeah, I know that this is real. I can't go based off of feeling. So like the hardest piece of evidence that I had pushing me towards religion was like this inkling to like read, which I had in like a lot of other fields. So that was like the biggest conflict. And that's where I really started to question it. And that's why I'm kind of just like, yeah, this is academic. And I'm never like, oh, I woke up today and God was like, you should have waffles instead of pancakes for breakfast. But some people do live like that. And not to say that they're like, below me or that I'm above them or that there's a difference between us. But I just, for me, that's what faith is. And that's like a whole different definition. And maybe that's just me like not being faithful. But it's just never been enough for me to like be like, yes, I am a Catholic or like, yes, I'm Presbyterian. But I still like consider myself kind of in those communities, maybe on the outskirts of all of them.
Have you ever seen religion being abused? Whether that is, I think again, you touched on this a little bit. You knew where I was going with the hate groups, obviously using the Bible or religious teachings to justify them hurting people. But have you ever seen it? Like, it doesn't need to be anything crazy. Have you ever seen it used casually or like in your life, but also when you were studying it, especially in your, I know you're taking a contemporary and moral issues class, and you often see that people use it to justify um, not giving women abortion rights or moral issues like that. Have you ever seen it in your personal life or when you were learning about it?
Yeah. I think like the first like instance of using the Bible to justify hate or like basically abusing the Bible that I heard, it was anti gay marriage. And it was like when people say like oh, it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It's like, yeah, because it was one instance in the Bible. Like it's one story. It's not supposed to be, yeah, everybody has to be like Adam and Eve because like they also had their villain arc. So are we all supposed to give into their villain arc? It's like it's kind of odd like that. And I'll get more into like other hate and other moral issues that we've talked about, but just like reading the Bible as a guide to life is a very, very slippery slope because it's so different. Like every story is so different, and there's such specific stories, and like in a lot of cases, they're not really possible in the real world. So like people are taking out of context. There's like beasts in the stories. There's people having visions in the stories. There's women who are virgins being impregnated in the stories. There's women who are like really old being impregnated in the stories. Like there's stuff that would never happen in the real world or like very unlikely to happen in the real world that are happening in the Bible casually. And that's obviously because like God and Jesus are characters in the Bible and they have a lot more influence over the people in those stories than they have in our real world. But then people in those stories, they take out like random tidbits that have to do with like, I don't want to say magic, but have to do with stuff that's like really out there. They take out random excerpts and they're like, yeah, this applies to this life. Like this applies to gay marriage somehow. This applies to abortion somehow. It's like, no, you really have to look at the entire story if you want to apply that. Um, but yeah, I feel like I don't know, a lot of people like use the Bible as like a cause for being pro-life. Um, but so far, I honestly have yet to see like really solid evidence from the Bible being pro-life. At the same like in the same way, I've yet to see any evidence from the Bible being like outstandingly pro-choice. I feel like I said, it has a lot to do with like the Bible is full of like I don't want to say myths, but like the Bible's full of stuff that
Their
may or may not have
stories.
their stories.
Yeah.
So obviously, nobody back in the day, or like very few people back in the day, were writing it. And like Mark was not sitting down and like, yes, this is subliminally about abortion. So
Yeah.
it's kind of very hard to turn to the Bible and be like, okay, we need to use this as a source of like, this is about this issue. It's like, no, it's not. It's a story, and you can use it as maybe a moral guide. Like, this might be the right thing to do. But there's no hard evidence, and I wouldn't use it as hard evidence. And like, you wouldn't apply a Dr. Seuss story to like a legal case. So bringing the Bible into like legal issues, human rights issues, stuff like that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like it makes so much sense in the spiritual realm, in the religious realm, and sometimes even in like the moral realm, the ethical realm,
Mm.
but it just doesn't make sense, in our day-to-day life because it wasn't made to govern our day-to-day life. It was made to govern like ourselves as like beings, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Speaking of governing, and also you, again, you knew where I was going. You touched on this a bit earlier. Um, how do you feel with like religion being politicized or really depthly embedded in our political system and just how our country is run? What is your view on
My
that?
take. Well, I wrote this speech a while ago where I was talking about like the American dream, and it was like about resilience, and I was talking about my ancestors being slaves and like stuff like that.
Mm.
And there just has to be this like spirit of like standing up against, administrations, like standing up for what you believe in, and having that same spirit of resistance that like so many people before you had, including the founding fathers. And like they had their flaws, but when designed, and like we like America, every government has its flaws, but when designed, America was meant to be like this safe haven, depending on the colony, refuge, for everyone. And I really do like the concept of the American dream, and like anybody, like you like come over here and like we got you, we're good, like you can start a new life in America. And obviously, like in past years, that's been kind of tainted. It's been changed, and that's really unfortunate. But with that, I feel like because we have like this kind of system of welcoming people, or we had, um, having like a government based in one religion, it doesn't make any sense. Like
Right.
America, we have too many people, we're too diverse, and at that point, which religion do we pick? Because here, Mamdani got sworn in on the Quran, and like everyone's freaking out, but like we've been swearing people in on the Bible forever. It's like, have you read every story in the Bible? Let me know, because some of them I'm like, I don't know. I don't. That's a little iffy to get sworn in on. If like, you know what I'm saying? So there's like murder in the Bible. Why does that constitute telling the truth in a murder case? Like
Mm.
that's just always contradicted
Yeah.
itself for me. That's it's always been just kind of been in the back of my mind. It's like, how does that make sense? How do we know someone's telling the truth or swearing on the Bible? They might not believe in God. And like that's another thing. We just have so many different people that to say like, oh, the Bible is the principal thing, or like this religion should be principal in America. It just doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
outside of like, oh, it's morally wrong, it's not the way you should be running a government, it's just not going to be successful. Like it's obviously going to lead to issues. And I think that if you're like a good leader and like you understand the way that government works and the way policy works and like the way structures need to be attained, you're not going to use the Bible as like a stepping stone. And like you yourself might be religious, but to be a politician, to be a representative of people, you have to represent everyone. You can't only represent yourself and your interests. And that's literally a teaching of the Bible. So I
Yeah.
feel like I said, it should be governing like your morals and ethics if you're using it, but that doesn't mean that it has to govern other people's lives. Um, and like the greatest instance I can think of with this is like the Ten Commandments in schools, and like Texas wanting to implement that. I don't know whether or not they have already.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like there's so many commandments in the Bible. There's so many different stories. There's so many different variations. There's so many different wordings. Which ones are you choosing? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's kind of all this extra energy. Like, why are we so concerned about putting up the Ten Commandments in schools where no kids are actually going to read them? Instead of like, maybe donating more Chromebooks to the schools and like doing this. And I really hate to use that line of reasoning because it's never made a ton of sense to me. It's like, yeah, like you could always be doing something else, but
Right.
sometimes you have to focus on like one specific issue. But in this case, it really does feel like just like a prime example of that. It's like we have bigger fish to fry. If
Right.
a teacher wants to like put up on the board, here are the 10 commandments, my class rules, this is my classroom, you guys should all look at this. I want you guys to know what this is. Okay, that doesn't mean any of the kids have to follow it. It
Right.
doesn't mean the teacher is being like abusive about it in any way, But to say for an entire state or for an entire nation, like this is one rule, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that just doesn't make sense. But you know, on like a classroom level, maybe the teacher's trying to be informative, maybe they're trying to share a part of themselves. So I feel like that could maybe be understandable, or that could maybe be like a loophole even, but it just doesn't make, like, I keep using this term, but it really just doesn't make sense to be
Yeah.
doing this. It's not universal. It's not a solution to any problem.
Yeah.
And as a government, you don't have to be wearing, like, we have people that are like religiously of higher power. Like, I'm thinking of the Pope.
Yeah.
Leave it to the Pope. Leave it to the Pope. And
Yeah.
let's worry about passing some legislation because nothing is
Right.
getting to the House or the Senate. So stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And even like our universal currency has "In God We Trust" on
Yeah.
it. So it's, it's, I feel like there's a lot of ways, whether we realize it or not, where just religion comes into play every single day. Ooh. Um,
It's
and
okay.
and yes, I remember learning about the Ten Commandments being implemented in the schools, and I agree with you where it's, a teacher's classroom is kind of like their second home, and they want to, if they want to share a
Yeah.
part of themselves with it. But, there's a difference between forcing children to believe one thing and like having a like a picture on their wall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. It's like having them come in every day and like recite the Ten Commandments is like
right.
very different from just like having a
Yeah.
cross on your wall.
Yeah.
I think that that's also like some gray area that does have to be considered.
Right. I agree.
When thinking about just like a divided nation, I've always thought that that kind of not that it's like okay or that it's necessary, but it works well for America to like be different. We can't all, I mean, this is like a pretty, accepted doctrine. It's like we can't all agree. That would just like, life would be boring, but also it's not possible. And we don't, like, I'm very much against like the rule of the majority. Like, I really do think people should like be forming opinions for themselves on every single issue instead of just being like, you know, I'm a Democrat, so like I feel this way about everything. I feel the same way all Democrats do about everything. It's like, no, you're your own person and you have to like consider the way that like your life has lined up with these different situations and these different policies and laws and stuff. Um, so that I've always been like, yeah, it would make sense for us to have blue states and red states, and like that's okay. I do think though that when you get to the extreme sides of things, that's where it starts to get pretty iffy. Like I said, hate groups, that's just never where you want to go with it. Um, so when you start to get to the point where like someone from California might feel threatened going to another state, or like someone from another state might feel threatened coming into California, that's where I'm like, that's not the nation we want to have. Like, we should be able to disagree about political stuff and like, like laws, like should weed be legalized in a certain state, stuff like that. We should be able to disagree about that without it feeling like, oh my God, if I fly to Montana, like I might not come back. Like stuff like that. That should never be the case,
Right.
anywhere for that matter. And then when talking about like the nation and like federal law and stuff, I've always felt that the president, and like a lot of other politicians should be representative of all people. So like as individuals, we have our own beliefs, but when we step into like this political sphere, we have to start considering what's best for all Americans. And I feel like that's something that we really lost. Like what you said, like if someone kills someone, it becomes, are they a Democrat or a Republican, not did they kill someone? So I feel like that's a really big gap that we need to work on closing. And it's been open for a while, but it's really widened in the last few years of like, oh, the house is split perfectly. So then it's like, okay, we're not passing anything. Like, at that point, I really do think that we need to get back to representing the interests of whoever you're representing, as a member of like the assembly, so that we're able to, get stuff off the ground and like start making progress. Um, but other than that, I've always kind of accepted that, yeah, people are going to view it differently. And just statistically, one state's going to come out red, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like every single person from that
Right.
state is a Republican. And then also you have swing states, which have always been kind of a prime example to me, at least, that like things can change and they will change. So like there's really no point in, I don't want to say worrying about it, but there's no point in being like, oh, everyone from there is just like awful. Like it's very conditional. So
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the last two questions I ask everyone that comes. So, what do you think religion in the future of America will look like? And what do you hope it will
uh,
look like?
ooh, I can't predict. I don't
I know
know.
you're just guessing. You're just guessing. No pressure.
Um, I mean, I think. Well, we have like as America specifically, but like the world too, we have this habit of looking like into the future and being like, there will be flying cars.
Yes,
It's like, actually, there won't be. Like things advance a little bit, but like
of course.
we have, well, we don't have the same phones, but like we have the same basic structure of a phone. Like we have the same idea of a phone, we have the same idea of a car, we have the same idea of a microwave. We've just evolved. So I think that in that case, religion is going to evolve a lot. Like I know a lot of churches are starting to be on radios now, so like more people can listen in and like doing stuff over Zoom, counseling over Zoom. So I think that religion will become more accessible like that. But I don't think that there's going to be like some crazy jump in it in like the next like 50 years,
Okay.
because there might not be like a crazy change, but there's definitely going to be change, and like there's always change.
Mm,
Um and then what I hope religion looks like, I don't know. I hope that we kind of get back to the basics, for lack of a better term, and like I really do hope that like people living by the Bible go back and look at the Bible and like really analyze every single story for themselves and see how it applies to their life, and like how it's really just supposed to be a moral guide and not like a thing that like determines the way you live. Like yes, you should treat your neighbor as like you'd like your neighbor to treat yourself, but that doesn't mean that you should like go out and get this job. You know what I mean? Like,
mm.
I really do hope that people will start to see it as more of a tool for being just like a better person and like living through God's image, rather than, using it as like a vehicle for hate or like, bad decisions and stuff like that. Um, but, and then like also just like churches and stuff, separation of church and state, and like just kind of being more accepting of all members of the community and really opening up religion for a lot of people, because I know a lot of minority groups tend to stray away from religion because they feel threatened by it.
Mm.
So I really hope that there do like more churches branch out, just accepting members and like wanting to move people towards a positive way of life rather than judging them. Yeah, I
I
think we're getting there.
agree.
I think we're getting there. So
I think we're getting there too. I agree. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Lip Sealed podcast.
thank you for having
I'm so
me.
happy you could make it.
Bye,
Okay,
Claire. Thank you.
bye.